Well, all right, it is about that time. So, first of all, welcome. You're clearly watching on YouTube because I haven't started the stream yet. So please do the little YouTube dance. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the little bell icon if you want, all of that sort of stuff. And remember, you don't do any of that stuff to help me or my channel. You do it to tell YouTube what you like and want to see more of. That's important to recognize and understand because that is what fucks people up all the time using YouTube. I see people complain and say that I get this kind of content all the time in my feed and I don't know why, but I always make sure to like it because, you know, the artist has been working hard. Yeah, but if you don't like it, then maybe don't click like. It's probably a good idea. Anyway, I'm almost done with the login bonuses here on Clip Studio. We got 3 more, and I'm gonna have those done pretty quick. You can see here that the next one is in like 12 hours and some minutes, 12 hours and 11 minutes. And then I got 2 more days after that. So like in the next 72 hours, I'm going to complete the whole 20 login bonuses. And I'm going to be very proud of myself. And I'm going to have 740 Clip Studio points. And I don't need those or want those. It's a checklist. I want to fill out the checklist. I want to get all 20 points. Not for any particular purpose, just because I want to, you know? It's kind of dumb, but that's who I am, and that's how I behave. Anyway, let me jump on in here and share my screen to get the stream started. Hello. Where's my window to preview? There it is. Okay. Go live. There it is. Okay. Put on my glove again. And we're not going to be talking about the landscape today because I have spent, I'm pretty proud of myself because over the past 7 days, on 4 of these 7 days, I have actually managed to do something that was not landscape painting. I did like additional stuff. So that was pretty cool. And let me jump on in here and we'll take a look at some of that. And what I've been doing is, I talked about this last week, but what I have been doing is I've been going through and I have been doing a gesture drawing, a composition, and a redraw of a sketch from reference. And what I did was, all of these are Kobeni from Chainsaw Man, because that's who I was thinking of at the time. I was looking up pictures of her, and I was like, there are a lot of these. I should save a whole bunch of them and do reference pictures. And there's all kinds of stuff, and you can see that I do my gesture drawing in red, I do my composition in blue, I do the final sketch in black, and I do all of these little notes like I fucked up the hand, I fucked up the other hand, the face is too long, I didn't do the shading properly in here, I didn't get the shadow right in here under the arm, the tie in the back, there's a little thing where she ties her apron in the back. I didn't get that in there. And the curve of her butt, I didn't get the curve of her butt right somehow. I'm not sure how to work on that. And actually the width here, it looks like her body is too wide. I feel like this should have been a little bit different. So that was the first thing that I did. And then the second day I did this one. And you can see here, this is her introduction in the manga. And you can see that there's not a lot of gesture here, but there is some. The same with the composition. And with the composition here, I was doing just like, I was including the clothing in the composition. I don't think I should have done that. And I got the folds kind of wrong on this. The arms are different lengths because I'm stupid. And again, the face is too long, and there's a lot of stuff that I didn't get right. The eyes don't look right at all. And I feel like her shoulders are too wide as well. So then we move on to day 3. And on day 3, I said, okay, we're going to look at the composition a little bit differently. And I indeed looked at the composition differently to kind of figure out what's going on underneath the clothing. And you can see here I did a little bit more of the value study on this, and there's some definite improvement going on here. The face is not as high as it has been, but I made the neck too long. I put the head too high up. That should really be moved down a little bit. And you can see right here, over here is the hair, and over here is the hair. And you can see over here, the hair comes down over the shoulder, and over here, it does not. And I got the length of the hair about right, but the length of the neck is wrong, so it doesn't come down to the right place. So there's all kinds of stuff wrong here, but most importantly, you could see a slight difference in the way I approached the composition. And here in particular, I was revisiting this kind of concept. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that on layer 4, which actually turned into 3 layers, because I've got one with the reference on it. I've got one with the construction and gesture drawing, because it's kind of wide. And because it's kind of wide, you know, I didn't have room. So as I was looking at this, as I was considering this, here's the kind of situation that I was looking at. We're going to jump in here, and I'm going to go, okay. We're going to use some green, kind of talk about this. Now, I have previously done my construction for the body with a kind of monolithic piece like this. That's not the way it should be done, because what you really need to do is you need to represent how the human body works. And instead of thinking about it that way, it makes more sense to think about it this way, and to kind of have that. Here's the spine that connects. We got the spine here, the spine here, the spine here, and the spine here, and then all the way up at the top you got the head. So you've got kind of this triple arrangement, and it kind of goes out and in and out and in and out and in, and it does this kind of bend. But on top of that, the upper and lower parts of the body have this space in the middle here where all the guts are. And I've talked about this before, and I've said, you know, you can think about it as an egg, and then you split the egg in half, and you put another top half on, and you put another bottom half on. Okay? So what you've got here is you've got what amounts to a 4-element height, okay? But 2 of those are up there, and 1 of those is down here, and then you've got 3 more here in the middle. You've got about 1.5 there. You've got another half down here, and you've got another hole up here. And all of that kind of fits together. So what you've got is sort of this 2, 3, 1 scenario. And that all just kind of fits together, one piece on top of the next. But the most important thing I want to go over here is when we talk about this as an egg, all right? And particularly when we talk about the top half of the egg. The top of the rib cage is surprisingly small. It's about the same distance around as the top of your skull. You have the top of your skull, and you've got kind of, here's a face sticking down off of that. And then that little space for your skull right there That's about the same width as that top of your ribs. And then your ribs get a little bit wider and a little bit wider as they go down, and they kind of spread out toward the front. Now we'll talk a little bit about how the anatomy works on this. But the important bit is right here. Here's the most important part of your upper torso is the spinal column. And the spinal column is kind of a circle with two little wings to the side and two little projections off of the back. Those two little projections off the back, those link together in little interlocking V's as you go down, okay? And the reason they do that, the reason they lock together like that is so that so there's space, and then when you bend backward, these lock into one another and prevent you from bending so far back that your spine collapses in on itself from tension. And in the same way, if you move forward, it kind of holds everything together so nothing slips off to the side. So that's all very useful design. But just in front of that is your throat, okay? Now, obviously, your throat is not a bone, but that is what goes in the top of your rib cage. And over here, you've got a bundle of nerves and blood vessels, and these are to feed your brain. Your brain is up here. And that brain is up there being fed by these blood vessels, and the nerves are conducting all the signals down your body through the spinal cord right here. And because you've got these two very important structures right here, over here you have a clavicle, and you've got the two clavicles right here. Clavicles are kind of S-shaped in both directions. So your clavicles right here, you've got what's called the sternocleidomastoid, which is to say there's a muscle that is connected here there's a muscle connected right here to the manubrium, which is at the center. It's the top of the sternum. And it's connected here on the clavicle. And that runs up to your jaw, to the mastoid process up here, underneath of here. And that's that muscle right there. And you can feel it. You can see the tendon right here. You can see another tendon right here. And those lead up. And there's a pretty wide, substantial muscle right here that connects right underneath of the mandible, right at the mastoid process. So that's all that's really going on here is you've got your spinal cord, you've got your throat, you've got the carotid sheath. It's got the jugular vein in there as well. And then that is all protected by this muscle that sits in front of it and connects at the middle. So you get kind of this shape. And then you've got the kind of bulging middle right there. And then right here, this is what we call the pit of the neck. And then up over top of this, you've got the larynx or the voice box. Now, we're not going to get a whole lot into like how to draw these things or anything like that. But the important thing to remember on all of this is that this top part right here, this top part is really not that big, okay? And it doesn't come down as far as you'd think. You would expect it to come down really, really far, and it doesn't. There's a lot of space from that final rib down to the hip, right in here, because here's your hip bone, and here's the gutters that sit alongside that. And you've got all of this space in here, and that's all soft. And the only bone that's in there is just right there. It's that spinal column that runs right through there. And this comes around right here. You've got the iliac crest along the sides over here, and you've got all of your all of your various pelvic pieces, the acetabulum, which is where your thigh bone sits in, and it comes down here to the knee and that joint there. So the thing to think about when you're looking at the torso is it's not a single mass. It's two hard masses of the rib cage up top and the pelvis down at the bottom. And they're just kind of connected by this little, almost just a cable in the back. There's bone back there, obviously, and it's got some body to it, but it's not a whole lot. And that little area right there, that's not a whole lot when it comes to the cross section of the torso. And another important thing to remember here is when we're talking about the upper musculature. You've got over here, you've got your shoulder blades. We already talked about the clavicles right here. And the clavicles and the shoulder blade has a little divot in it right here that the top of your arm bone fits into. That top ball fits in there. And the clavicle pushes that little bit on your shoulder blade sits right here. And here's the ball from the top of your arm. And then up here is the clavicle. And you can see that it's pushing down and back. It's opposing that. And it's a little bit farther forward, actually. It's about there. So that's holding that in and pushing it back in there. And then over here to the side, there's this kind of wing that comes up off of the shoulder blade and that holds it, and you've got sort of a tripod that holds the ball of your shoulder blade in place. And all of that fits together, and that is what holds your shoulder in place. But the important thing to remember about all of that is this. Here's the manubrium, and that's the bone that your clavicle is connected to. So your clavicle hangs off of that. You got a bone, you got the clavicle hanging off of it. You've got the shoulder blade back here in those two pieces, and you've got the arm slotting in there. And the shoulder blade doesn't connect to shit. There's no other bone back there. This whole thing is just loose. It's connected right here at this part of the manubrium, and that's it. All of the rest of it is mobile. It moves around, okay? And because all of that is mobile and moves around, you might ask, how does it stay in place? Well, there's a muscle. There's a muscle that connects right here on the shoulder blade, and that muscle comes over here and it connects at the back. And in the same way, your chest muscle up here, your chest muscle up in the front, okay, that is connected up here underneath the shoulder in your armpit. It's connected right in here, okay? And it's connected right here. It all just kind of connects at the sternum, and then right here, it all just kind of hangs. So this bit right here and this bit right here, those are what hold your arm on. Just this one little bit right here in the middle and the same in the back. That's what keeps your arm from falling off. That's all that keeps your arm from falling off. And it's because of all of this stuff. It's that big, when you look at the front of the chest, okay? You look at the front of the chest and you go, okay, here's this big pectoralis muscle and this big pectoralis muscle. And over here's this big shoulder, and then you've got this big back that's back behind that. And over here's another big shoulder and all of that. But all of that is just kind of sitting there on top of this egg shape right here. and it's really kind of narrow underneath of it. All of this stuff here, all this stuff up top, it can pretty much just be lifted right off, okay? All of that is just sort of sitting on top of that rib cage, which is very narrow up at the top. And you've just got this sheet of muscle hanging down there and a sheet of muscle hanging down there. There's nothing connecting here. This part of the pectoralis muscle, it just moves. It's not connected. It's connected here. It's connected here. There's nothing here. It's not connected at all. That's why men appear to have boobs when they get older and flabbier. So all of that bulk up at the top of the upper body, that's all in one mass, and it helps to think of this all as a single mass instead of the two separate masses that it is, because they do kind of go together, unless you're drawing some really gross art. But that process of thinking about it in this way this is something that I'm working on in terms of doing a better job on the composition drawings. And you can see here that I've got, the egg in the middle, the egg up top, and the egg down at the bottom. And I'm kind of thinking about it in terms of these two eggs, because I did a previous video about that. And as I've been doing these composition and gesture drawings, I've really been thinking about how that really did work quite well. And you can see here, if we just look directly at the source material, you can see here's this very kind of narrow rib cage. And here are the shoulders and arms. And that mass up there. Here obviously is the arm. And then all the way down here you got the hips. So you got this big space right in here. Okay? You got this big space that's just, it's all soft. That's just got this one bit of spine back behind it. That's all. And all of that is soft. All of that is just soft tissue, which means it bends in all directions and it twists, and like clothing, it can wrinkle. It can wrinkle and fold, and it has a sort of drapery over the torso, particularly when you're talking about somebody that's a little bit more of a Zoftig figure and has a higher fat content on the outside. That sits in a particular way. And it tends to be very tight around the joints and around the hands. So you wouldn't have like a whole lot of pudge in these areas, but you would have a drape of more bulk around there. If you were drawing a larger character, a more full-figured person, as opposed to a full-figured woman who would just be like, that's what we mean when we say a full-figured woman. But a full-figured person, they've got more on the outside of the body. And in particular, a lot of that more tends to center right here around this soft area, because that's a convenient place for it to be. And it's a convenient place for it to fold and bunch. But it still comes in and connects pretty tightly to the joints. It comes in here pretty much the same way. As you get into the hips, larger people have a lot out here, but it tightens right up and around the feet. Feet do get puffy because, Because of gravity, human fat is a liquid. A lot of people don't realize this. But if you've ever... I think there's a movie that had this in it. There was some movie where they were robbing the dumpsters outside of a plastic surgery place. And I learned this at the dumpster outside of a plastic surgery place because I had been drinking and needed to throw up. So I was going to throw up in the dumpster, and there are all of these bags. But it was Fight Club. It was in Fight Club. They were stealing the human fat outside of the liposuction clinic to make soap. So you get some puffiness to the feet, but mostly when you're working with a larger person, it's around the joints. It's around the area, and then it tightens up around the joints, because the joints, pretty much everything stays tight in there. There's not a lot in here. There's not a lot of fat on your elbow. Okay? It just doesn't settle there. It's the same with your knee. There's not a whole lot of knee fat that settles in here. There's some, but just not as much. Everything still kind of compacts in there, because it's very important to stay mobile, that your joints don't have a lot of crap packed around them. That would make it just impossible to move. So you typically have the fat deposits elsewhere other than the joints. You don't tend to have them on fingers. There may be some puffiness to the palms and to the tops of the feet. The feet will swell, and they'll kind of push outward. It's like when you bake bread, it pushes against the walls of the pan. You see that sort of thing when larger people wear shoes, especially if they're wearing like little strappy numbers. If they're wearing strappy shoes or sandals or something like that, you can really see them digging in and the flesh kind of puffing out around it. You also get that kind of muffin top thing. If they're wearing like a bare midriff shirt, you get that little puff out, which is just like the skin dent on stockings. When you draw a woman wearing stockings, that needs to go in a little bit. The stocking comes up here, and then at the top of the stocking, the skin comes out a little bit because that friction is pulling in. I don't know why I ended up getting on this topic, but the whole thing that you're thinking about with all of this is how the structure actually fits together and why it fits together that way. That's the critical element. Like, people don't generally get a lot of fat on their head. Fat people don't get a fat skull. Okay, there's skin and bone. That's like it. They may get kind of puffy in the face, but they don't really get fat around the skull or around the jaw. And their necks will expand a bit, but not as much as the rest of them typically does, because the fat deposits end up going in places that a fat deposit isn't going to create a lot of difficulty or a huge problem. Your body's efficient that way. But the thing that I keep thinking about as I'm building this sort of thing is I think about how the proportions work, and the proportions kind of work. You've got a sort of, now, if you'll recall, we don't use heads to lay things out. We use tiddies, because when you use heads, a head is narrower than it is tall. So when you say something like the human shoulders are 2 heads wide, well, are they as wide as 2 heads are tall, or are they as wide as 2 heads are wide? And they're as wide as 2 heads are tall. But titties are the same dimensions. They're round. Because titties are round, they have the same dimensions in both directions. Which means you don't have to wonder. We tell you about, are they as wide as 2 titties are tall, or as wide as 2 titties are wide, or as wide as 1 titty wide and 1 titty tall. any of them work because it's the same dimension either direction. And also, when you say the shoulders are 2 titties wide, duh, that's what goes there. That's what has to fit there. Obviously, they're 2 titties wide. That's how wide they need to be. It's exactly how wide they need to be. That's what titties are for, to fill up that space. Well, it's not what titties are for, but what titties end up being. Filling up that space. And we're talking about like the central mass where it contacts the body, which again here, let's go over a new kind of anatomy. Let me up a new layer here. When you look under the arm, okay, you've got this neat little interplay of stuff. You've got, first of all, you've got the shoulder, okay? You got the shoulder here. And then here, you've got the chest, which comes up along the shoulder right there. And you can see that coming up along the shoulder, okay? And it inserts down here, but the bulk of it is still sitting up over top of that shoulder mass. So it's creasing in right there. Now you got your bicep here. Now underneath of that arm right there, you've got a little muscle that's called the axilla, okay? And that little muscle there, the axilla, that sits in front of the latissimus dorsi, which in turn sits in front of the tricep that's coming up around here, okay? So your lat is coming up here, and then your tricep is back around here, and it's reaching up under here and connecting to the arm. So you've got this little formation. Now, your titty, which is right here, actually comes from up under here. And this little shape right there, that little shape that goes up under the arm, that is called the axillary process, okay? And the way the titty is actually formed is with the nipple facing inward. And this is lifted up and rotated around. So this part right here, that wraps up underneath. That wraps up around like that. So you've got this kind of lifting and rotating as it comes up. So it's sitting down here, and you lift it up, and then you rotate it around. So it's got this kind of twisting nature. It's got this twisting nature to it right in here. And that comes in up from under the arm, and that sits over top of the pectoralis muscle. So up here, you've got your, so here you got your titty, and here you got your axilla over here, and here you got your pectoralis, here's your shoulder, and over here's your lat. So you've got this sort of swoop of the breast that goes up underneath of the arm. And that swoop of the breast going up underneath the arm is something that a lot of people just do not get right, because you see all of these people that are drawing anime characters, and they're drawing, the breasts are coming down from here. They don't come down from there. They may pull on the fabric there, but that's not where they come from. They're not connected here. They're not like this. They're not hanging like a couple of bags around your neck. That's not the way those fit together. So you have to think in terms of, this is coming from up underneath the arm. And that's going to be smooth right there. All of this is going to be very smooth running up around here. You're not going to have a crease for the pectoralis muscle there. You're not going to have that, because this breast is going to come around. It's going to wrap around the side of that chest muscle and reach up to the axillary process. So you've got this kind of, it gives you your nice smooth side boob. Now that's very important, is to have your nice smooth side boob. And then there's your axilla right there, and there's your bicep right there. Tricep. Let's forget which direction the tricep goes. It's like this. Axillary process there. I have a diagram, but YouTube would get mad if I showed it. I got a bunch of stuff like that. I got all kinds of like. I have all kinds of images that I use to study the exact anatomy of things that I'm looking at, and I sit there and go, I need to know how to draw that. And, you know, sometimes you can simulate things. Like if you fold a towel just right, then you can make yourself a reasonable simulacrum of the appropriate pieces of anatomy that you're trying to draw sometimes, and that's occasionally useful. Like I know I've got images of this in here somewhere. I know they're higher up than that. Geez. Yeah, there we go. You just if you just fold a towel properly, it has all the right pieces. And if you drop a ball bearing in the middle, you can simulate the missing bits. But I don't know. YouTube might still get mad about that. You never can tell. But yeah, anyway, the thing that I've been thinking about over the course of the past couple days, of course, the past week really, is the way to do the composition for the waist and the upper body. And more, the more I look at this, the more I go, your bust line, that shouldn't even be part of your construction. That's something that you should do later. That's another thing is, I remember we were talking about the way the upper body anatomy is structured. From the pit of the neck, there's a 90-degree angle out, and this is where the nipples are, which means when you have breasts, the breasts are not pointing the same way. They're pointing at 90-degree angles from each other. So when you're drawing somebody straight on, you've got one breast facing off that way and one breast facing off that way. And when you're drawing them a little from the side, you'll have one facing directly towards you, like right here, and one facing off to the side, like that. Obviously, it's left as an exercise for the viewer to figure out what the appropriate shapes are supposed to be there. And if you're doing any kind of weeb-related art, it's tremendously important to get the titties right. The titties are hugely, hugely important. You got to get those right. You've always got to get those right. And I've pretty much covered everything that I wanted to cover here. Oh, right here. There's one important thing about this area, which is there's a double crease right here. when when you fold the leg in, okay? When you fold the leg in, there's a little added crease that sits there. There's right here. This is what I call the soft spot. There's like, if you touch it, it's soft. But there's this one little bit. So when you're looking at somebody from the side and their leg is pulled all the way in, it's not that. That's not how you do that. There's a double crease. Always exactly a double crease. It's not 3 creases. When it's skin, it's exactly 2 creases. And those creases on either side of where you would expect that single crease to go. So that's important right there. And there's a little kind of bunched up space. So you've got the leg comes up like this, and you've got the 2 creases, and you've got that little bit there. And that's how the bare skin wrinkles, right in there. Now, if you've got clothing can have like lots of wrinkles and they all bunch up together. But if you're talking about just skin, there's always that one little bit. And that's more or less what I wanted to go over today. This is more or less what I've been thinking about and talking about and working on. It's just this whole examination of the anatomy. I haven't done any work on landscaping like all week. The whole thing has just been these gesture drawings and compositions and putting all of that together, and just kind of trying to get a better handle on drawing characters and figures so that I'll be able to do that more effectively. And at some point in the future, I'm going to have to get used to putting multiple people together and keeping everybody on model. So like if this character is taller than that character, I have to draw them with their appropriate heights in the scene. And that is not something I'm good at. That is not something I've ever been good at. I'm also not very good at making characters look like they're actually in the place that I've drawn them. They always sort of look like they're just plopped on top of it and not an integral part of what you're looking at. And I need to work on that. And one of the things that's really been underscoring that to me is you've probably noticed if you've been hanging around the Discord or if you've been watching me on Twitter, I've been watching a lot of Boku no Hero Academia over the course of the past week. And I mean, I crammed through the entirety of season 4, and now I'm like halfway into season 5. I'm trying to get caught up through season 6, and I'm halfway through season 5 now. And one of the things that just keeps hitting me over and over again is they do such a tremendous job of not just drawing the anatomy, not just getting the hands right every time and getting the characters on model every time, but they do a great job with the dynamics of drawing characters in motion and making the characters look like they're moving, even in just like a single frame of the manga. And then on top of that, every single character has their own personality, and they put that personality into everything, and they put it into facial expressions, they put it into body language, they put it into clothing style and just general gestures. And it's really, really impressive. And I am hard pressed to think of anything else that does such a good job of putting all of that stuff on display. So I've been watching a lot of that, and I've been thinking, you know, I should probably pick up some of the manga so that I can examine it as in an artistic fashion. Well, I can also just like grab selected panels the the problem with grabbing selected panels for any manga off of the internet is they frequently don't have the panels that I'm interested in, because I'm interested in studying various super specific things, and they frequently just do not have those things screenshotted on the internet because nobody else cares. Nobody else is interested. It's like that whole thing with the folds when you bend a leg, when you have that fold around the soft spot at the hip. I noticed that on Boku no Hero Academia with Mirka, the rabbit hero, and they do a very good job on that with her. And it was seeing it there that just kind of struck me and made me go, I almost never see anybody do that right. Everybody always tries to do that with like a single fold, and it's never a single fold. It's always exactly two. But you have to have looked at a lot of people naked for that. Anyway, or I guess you could just like, people who spend a lot of time at the beach, I guess, would notice that. People go swimming a lot. Or surfing. Surfing is another place you'd notice that. Anyway, that's that's neither here nor there. Yeah, that's more or less what I wanted to cover. More or less what I wanted to go over. More or less what I wanted to talk about. That's kind of all I have to talk about at the moment. Yeah, so okay, bye.